For a lot of people, I say, well, I'm most well known as a musician. I used to be in this band, Talking Heads, and I can kind of leave it at that. Russell's no longer in this movie. I look back at the music I did in the early days, yes, with some exceptions, with a lot of pride. I think a lot of it holds up quite well, but I have no nostalgia for that period whatsoever. I don't miss the kind of the shit on the sidewalks and the junkies and everything else. I don't miss any of that. That to me was, to some people that's part of the glamour. To me that was not part of the glamour. That was just nasty stuff. I remember that the music I made when I started off with Talking Heads, with that band, that it was based, from my understanding, on basically a few simple rules. They were all very negative rules. They were all like don'ts. They were all like no guitar solos. Nobody plays anything that duplicates what anybody else plays. I'm going to use common language. I'm not going to use kind of cliched pop music, ooh baby, 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 baby kind of talk, except maybe ironically. But so there were like maybe a handful of rules, not very many, and that was it. That kind of guided everything, at least for a little while. And then you can start to chip away at them and let things kind of be what they want to be. But those rules kind of generate a whole thing to start with. That sounds, I know that for some people that can sound really weird. We want to make a band. Okay, what are the rules? It wasn't quite as kind of crazy and kind of rule-bound as that. But in retrospect, I could tell that, yes, we did have those rules, whether they were spoken or unspoken. Those rules were a reaction to what we perceived as being kind of the excesses of the music that was all around us, the pop music that seemed completely irrelevant and didn't seem to be talking to our generation. We thought, okay, let's strip it down to what really matters to us. I still do have rules. I recently finished a record with St Vincent, Annie Clark, it's her given name. We made a rule for ourselves that the band that we would work with would be primarily a brass band. There'd be like a dozen brass players. And there'd be drums and stuff, ourselves playing guitar with that, but that the main musical core of all the songs we were going to write together were going to be based on this brass band. So we self-imposed this rule on ourselves. When we started, we thought we were going to be performing someplace where the sound system was completely inadequate. So having a band like that would mean you barely needed a sound system. And then we just said, it's a good rule. It's really neat. It takes us somewhere and it prevents us from kind of wandering off every possible place we could go. Yeah, so I still live by that. I love collaborating with different people. It kind of pushes me outside of my safety zone, and I like that. The record I did with St. Vincent, a lot of it was done remote, passing files back and forth via emails. I mean, we would get together and record everything together and mix everything together, and we would just generally get together every once in a while just to kind of spend FaceTime time talking just about how do you feel about this, how do you feel about that, what's your interests, all that kind of stuff. But a lot of the writing was definitely a lot of files being passed back and forth, which I find I'm increasingly working that way. Maybe people have a picture of musicians sitting down with two guitars or a piano and coming up with a song. And maybe that still happens, but I don't think it happens very much anymore. I think one person starts with the germ of an idea and then somebody else adds to it and then it gets passed back and added to again or changed a little bit, and there's some give and take, maybe some pushing and shoving, but that kind of passing remote collaboration, it's a little bit dangerous, and it leaves the window for misunderstanding to happen. People will put things in an email that they might regret putting in. But it also allows for a lot of time in the collaboration. You don't have to react to something immediately. You can wait overnight and see how it sits with you. If somebody sends something to you and you go, "Whoa, this is kind of out of the blue, it's a shock, how do I absorb this?" You can have 24 hours to see if it works for you, or if you can adjust your expectations or trajectory and figure out what it wants to be, instead of going only by your very first reaction. I never try and second guess what an audience might like. I assume that we're all human, and that there's the Venn diagram of what I like and what an audience likes, there's some kind of overlap. And that's where I make a living. But I also realize that it's not a total overlap. I have to just assume that I'm human, they're human, we have some common concerns, and every once in a while I'll get something in that zone, but I can't always predict it. And if I tried to mold my work based on marketing considerations, on what I presume people are going to like, I'm going to fail. I'm David Byrne, and you're watching Epiphany on THNKR.